Going through sound from Mickey Loomis's press conference today down in New Orleans. It's a vital offseason for New Orleans in terms of picking a new head coach. You've got to hit with a bunch of draft picks. You've got to decide what you're going to do at the quarterback position, and you're starting a new era. And I think that it's just a vital year for New Orleans. I don't think that it's going to be very productive in terms of wins and losses come the fall, but I do think that there are changes that are going to be made that could be impactful for a decade if they do things the right way. Over the course of the next 6 months here. So talking about some of the sound that Mickey Loomis gave earlier today. And the first we're going to talk about is there impatience after not being a playoff team for the last 4 seasons down in New Orleans?
I think I'm still pretty patient. You know, I understand that, look, the results are the results, and you can't ignore the results. But you also have to look beyond the results sometimes and understand the reasons behind the symptoms, and some are in our control, some aren't. And so, look, we have to do the best job we can with the things that are in our control, and we have to understand the things that aren't. Look, I know you guys, nobody wants to hear this, but this injury thing was a big deal this year, a really big deal. Prevented us from winning games, prevented us from being competitive in games, and so we have to get a handle on that more than anything else.
I just don't like that sound. I just don't like it. I don't hear any of that out of Detroit right now. Why? Because they've built depth and talent, and they've overcome it with great coaching. And I just don't care to hear about the injuries. We all know the offensive line got hurt. We all know your wide receivers got hurt. We all know your quarterback got hurt. Like, we got it. But the problem is, if Loomis thinks that the injuries are 85% and the ineptitude everywhere else is 15%, he needs to flip them. Because everybody in the NFL is dealing with injuries. The Saints had a terrible rash of them, but you cannot lean on that and keep doing the things you've been doing in an organization. You're not drafting well enough. Your salary cap situation is atrocious. Your talent level is not good enough. Like, that is, you would not, in my estimation, have had a Pro Bowler if everybody stayed healthy. Maybe Eric McCoy, maybe Marshawn Lattimore, maybe, I mean, that's Kamara. That's not an injury situation. That's a talent situation. And that's a big problem. And I'm hopeful that he's not leaning too hard on this injury crutch, because that doesn't work. Now let's talk about blind spots in the organization. Loomis was asked about that, which is kind of, in my estimation, a nice way to say, like, you realize y'all are doing some stuff that's not very good?
I don't think I really want to get into the specifics of that. I'm just saying that in general, all of us, we have strengths and weaknesses. And so, you know, you have to marry up and be able to compensate for those things. You know, we talked about one right here. I'm maybe overly patient. So, you know, we have to have some people in here that are more, less patient, I guess. Proactive. Let me say proactive as opposed to less patient.
I don't like that sound either. You're kind of admitting that you're not proactive enough to do this. Now, I will say that I like the term patience, because that's what it's going to take here for New Orleans. They've been impatient for good reason for a decade now at the back end of Breeze's career. Now it does take some patience. Now you are going to have to use your draft picks and wait for those guys to develop. You can't just go sign some free agents and restructure all the contracts and kick the can down the road some more and do gymnastics to get just $2 under the salary cap and see what works. No, you got to chill. You got to develop some young players. And that does take some patience. So that I do like. Don't tell me that you got to find somebody that's more proactive. You can be that. You can be proactive. Let's talk about draft picks. And that's something that Mickey Loomis was asked about.
Oh, I'd always take more draft picks if we could get them. But look, I like where we're at, and I like our history of drafting too. I think we've got a really good history of drafting. Again, you know, when you have a new coaching staff, now you've got to, you know, recalibrate and adjust not the evaluation process, but what you're looking for. And so that's going to be a lot of work, you know, once we get a coaching staff hired, to make sure that we're on the same page relative to the types of players, not the types, but the things that they want their players to do, and making sure that we're bringing guys that can do what they need.
Beck, I'm going to ask that you play the first line of that soundbite once again so everyone can hear this.
Oh, I'd always take more draft picks if we could get them, but...
Well, would you, Mick? You would always take more draft picks? Let's just do a search here. They have traded up and traded away draft picks 26 times in the last decade. You know how many times they have traded back for those more draft picks that he says he'll always take? 0. Not once. Not ever. So what are we talking about here? You will always take more draft. In fact, you never take more draft picks. You never take more draft. You always give the draft picks away. And I'm not here to tell you that the draft has been awesome. It maybe is awesome if you want to include Zack Baun, who's an All-Pro in Philly. Maybe awesome if you want to include Trey Hendrickson, who's an All-Pro in Cincinnati. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Caden Ellis, and a lot of those guys doing some good things elsewhere. But I'm looking at some pretty bad draft picks over the last 5 years. I just can't get over that I'll always take more draft picks. You never take more draft picks. So that part kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but maybe he's turned over a new leaf and they will take more draft picks this year. This is one of the most important drafts in the history of the franchise coming up. They've got a lot of picks. They've got a lot of early picks, and they're going to have to hit on some guys. And then you're going to have to develop them, and you can't have happen what happened with Zack Baun, where you draft him and can't get him in the right spot, and then he leaves, and he's an All-Pro. And Mickey was actually asked about Zack Baun and how that worked out.
Well, look, it's not something that you like, that's for sure. But I understand the circumstances behind it. Look, we tried to sign, Zack Baun, but he was looking for, opportunity to get more playing time. And under the last, system, that wasn't going to be as likely. So, look, I'm excited that we drafted those players and they've had success. They were identified as talented players, but obviously it's not great when they go and have success someplace else. That hasn't happened a lot in our tenure here, but it does happen. And no different than when we get somebody from another team and they have success. Sometimes it's circumstantial. But no, when you draft good players, you want to keep them.
So the moral of all of this and what I've drawn from it is I'm going to go back to my buddy Shea Dixon's quote on recruiting. Watch what the recruits do, not what they say. I'm not all that interested in what Mickey Loomis says. I've just told you that I didn't love some of the sound from today, but I don't really care about press conferences. Y'all know that about me. It's weird that I'm in the media and I handle sound bites and write stories and I deal with sound bites, and that's part of the things that we do. But I care about wins and losses. I tell you all the time that I covered coaches who handle the media and give them all this access and say things quite literally in their open books. I've covered coaches that you don't know anything, and I don't really care. Just go win. And so I don't care if Mickey Loomis, talks a lot about injuries or says they're going to do this or that. All I really care about is if they show a willingness to go in a different direction. We'll see what happens with a new coach. We'll see how they handle this coming draft. We'll see what kind of free agent contracts they do or don't. We'll see what kind of restructures they do or don't. And we'll see if there has been a fundamental shift in the way the New Orleans Saints are doing business. I thought that the last offseason did indicate that they were slowing down on spending. Yeah, I didn't love the Kamara deal. It's done. It's not the end of the world. It's not that expensive, and he looks like he can still play. But that was really all they did. The Derek Carr decision is going to be a big one. Like, there's a lot of stuff that has to be done, and I will judge the Saints based far more on what they do than what Mickey Loomis has to say in front of a microphone. But I don't love some of the things that he said, and I'm just waiting anxiously to see if there's a change in philosophy moving forward. Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.